The red clay of Umuofia clung to Adeze's feet as she balanced a calabash of water on her head. The weight was nothing new. She had carried heavier burdens. At 23, Adaeze had never tasted luxury, only the bitter flavors of struggle. Her father had died when she was 10, leaving her mother with nothing but debts, dry land, and 4 children. Adaeze, the eldest, became mother to her siblings while her own dreams withered in silence. She never complained, not even when she dropped out of secondary school to hawk vegetables, not even when she overheard her uncle whispering to her mother that they should marry the girl off before she turns useless. She just kept walking, one dusty step after another, toward survival. But when her mother sat her down that morning and said, "You're getting married next week," Adaeze felt her knees go weak. "To who?" she asked, voice small. "To Obinna," her mother replied, avoiding her gaze. "He's kind, hardworking." Adaeze knew the name. Everyone did. Obinna, the quiet young man who barely spoke, lived on the edge of the village in a crumbling mud hut. He was an orphan, said to be cursed. He farmed alone and never accepted charity, even when his thatched roof fell in. They called him Obinna, the ghost. Adaeze wanted to scream. Instead, she swallowed her protest like bitter herbs. "Yes, Mama," she said. She didn't cry that night. She simply lay awake staring at the ceiling, wondering if God had forgotten her. The following week passed in a blur of borrowed wrappers and hushed gossip. The wedding was quiet, rushed, with only a few neighbors present. There was no music, no feast. Just palm wine passed from hand to hand, and a solemn nod from the village chief, who blessed the union with a forced smile. Obinna stood beside her in silence, wearing a faded white shirt and trousers patched at the knees. He was tall, dark-skinned, with strong arms and an unreadable face. He didn't look at her during the ceremony, didn't even smile. When the vows were done, Adaeze was led to his home, a lonely hut with cracked walls and a broken door. Inside was a wooden bed, a small firepot, and silence. "This is home now," he said simply. She nodded, afraid of her voice. In the days that followed, Obinna didn't mistreat her, but he didn't touch her either. He rose early to farm and returned late. He brought her water, left her yams, and repaired the leaking roof with his bare hands. He spoke little, ate less, and prayed often. Adaeze began to notice things. How he stared too long at the stars. How he always seemed to disappear for hours. How strangers from outside the village would occasionally visit late at night, speaking in hushed voices and leaving envelopes behind. She once saw him lock a small wooden chest and hide the key under a stone. When she asked what was in it, he replied, "Just tools." The villagers whispered. "He's strange," some said. "He speaks like someone who's seen the world," said others. But Adaeze had no time for gossip. She spent her days cleaning, cooking, and watching her new husband from a distance. One night, she found herself asking, "Who are you really, Obinna?" He looked at her, eyes deep and shadowed. "Just a man," he said, but something in his tone told her that wasn't the truth. And so, the mystery began, of the girl forced to marry a poor man, and the secret that would one day unravel their entire village. Adaeze rose before the sun and swept the hut in silence. Obinna had already gone to the farm, leaving only the scent of palm oil and the faint imprint of his feet on the earthen floor. She washed her face at the clay basin, tied her wrapper tighter, and stepped outside. The morning air was crisp. She fed the chickens, checked the plantings behind the hut, and fetched water from the stream. Everything felt normal, but nothing was normal anymore. She was a wife now, a woman in a stranger's life, carrying his name but not his story. Obinna spoke little but left clues in his silence. Adaeze began to notice patterns. Every Friday evening, he disappeared for hours. When she asked where he went, he simply said, "To think." Yet when he returned, his sandals were clean, his wrapper barely creased, as though it sat somewhere untouched by dust. One morning, Adaeze noticed a stone behind the hut had shifted slightly. Beneath it lay the wooden chest she'd once seen him lock. Curiosity gnawed at her like hunger. She waited until he was gone again, and lifted the stone with trembling fingers. The chest was heavier than it looked. She didn't open it. just touched its surface. Smooth, polished, unlike anything in their home. She let it go, for now, that evening. Obinna returned with a fish wrapped in banana leaf. He handed it to her, without a word. "Thank you," she said, watching his face. He nodded, sat by the fire, and began sharpening his machete. The blade gleamed. His movements were precise. Too precise for a village farmer. "Who taught you that?" she asked. "I had a teacher," he said. No names. No details. Silence settled again. The next day, a black SUV rolled into Umuofia. The village froze. Cars were rare, and this one was sleek, foreign, and dustless. It stopped near the well. A man in dark glasses stepped out, opened the back door, and waited. Obinna emerged, dressed in a white kaftan Adaeze had never seen. Clean, pressed, powerful. The villagers gawked. Some whispered. Others stared in awe. Adaeze stood in the doorway of the hut, heart pounding. He met her eyes but didn't speak. The man in glasses handed him an envelope. Obinna signed something and returned to the SUV. Moments later, it vanished down the red road. He returned hours later, clothes changed, back to his patched shirt and worn sandals. As if nothing had happened. "Who was that?" Adaeze asked. "No one important," he replied. She didn't press, but her mind raced. Why had he lied? Who wears a white kaftan to run errands in the bush? And who was sending him envelopes through men who looked like bodyguards? That night, she couldn't sleep. She turned over the words in her head. The chest, the vanishing, the way he moved. She crept outside, lifted the stone, and stared at the wooden box again. "I'm not ready," she whispered and replaced the stone. But questions don't die in silence. They grow, and Adaeze's silence was now screaming. The next morning, Adaeze noticed something tucked between the pages of the Bible Obinna kept by the window. He never read from aloud, but he turned its pages often, slowly, thoughtfully, like someone looking for a different kind of truth. When she picked it up to clean, a folded note slipped out. At first, she thought it was just a torn piece of prayer paper, but when she unfolded it, her breath caught. There were only 2 lines. "The funds have cleared. Lagos will be waiting by month's end." No name, no signature. Just that. She stared at it for a long time, her heart pounding like war drums. She put it back exactly where she found it, but nothing felt holy about that Bible anymore. That evening, Obinna came home early. He smelled faintly of expensive cologne, the kind Adaeze had once caught a whiff of when a politician's convoy passed through their village years ago. His face was calm, but his eyes carried shadows. He asked how her day went, and when she answered, he actually listened. "You're quieter than usual," he said. "You're more mysterious than most men," she replied. He didn't laugh, but his lips twitched. "Some things are better left unspoken," he said. "Some things demand to be understood," she countered. He looked at her then, really looked, as though realizing for the first time that the girl he married wasn't as soft as she seemed. Days passed, and the envelope man returned. This time, Obinna didn't try to hide. He stood outside, waiting as the black SUV approached. The villagers gathered again. But this time, Adaeze didn't watch from the doorway. She walked right up to them. "Good afternoon," she said, staring at the man in glasses. He looked startled, then forced a polite smile. "Afternoon, madam." Obinna watched her quietly. The man handed over the envelope, nodded, and left without a word. As the dust cleared, Obinna turned to her. "You want to ask?" he said. "Do you want to tell?" she replied. He gave her the envelope. "Open it." She did. Inside were crisp Naira notes, more money than her entire family had seen in years. Her fingers trembled. "Where did this come from?" she whispered. "From work," he said. "What kind of work?" "The kind that buys silence," he said flatly, and turned away. Adaeze stood rooted to the ground, hands full of truth she didn't ask for, and still not enough answers. That night, she couldn't sleep again. She lit a small lantern and sat outside under the mango tree, watching fireflies dance through the air. She remembered when all she wanted was a husband who wouldn't beat her, a home where no one screamed. She got that, but now she wanted more. She wanted honesty. She wanted to know if her life had changed without her consent. Obinna stepped outside quietly and joined her under the tree. "You're awake," he said. "You're hiding," she replied. He exhaled slowly. "You ever wonder if the truth will ruin what little peace we have?" She didn't answer. He continued, "Sometimes I think the truth is heavier than the lie." "So you'd rather let me live with a stranger?" she asked. "Sometimes," he said. "That's the only way to protect the one thing that still feels real." They sat in silence for a while. When she finally looked at him, she said, "You're not poor. You never were." His face didn't change. But in the corner of his mouth, something faltered, a secret unraveling, a thread pulling loose. And she knew, without him saying a word, that she was right. The next day, the village buzzed with whispers. Adaeze could feel the shift, the way people looked at her now. Not as the unfortunate girl forced to marry a ghost, but as someone who might be sitting on a secret too large for the village to contain. Women at the stream paused their chatter when she arrived. Children stared. Even her own mother visited with questions thinly veiled as concern. "He treats you well?" she asked, eyes darting around their hut. "He does," Adaeze replied, offering only what was safe. Her mother nodded slowly, lips pressed thin. "There's talk, you know, that maybe he's not who he says." Adaeze met her mother's gaze and said nothing. What was there to say? Obinna became harder to read. He still left at dawn and returned at dusk, but now he seemed more cautious, less silent. He would sit with her longer, watch her cook. Sometimes he'd ask if she missed her old life. She'd say, "What old life?" And he would smile faintly, like that answer pleased him. But the truth pressed harder every day. Adaeze wanted to understand what world he belonged to and what part of it he was keeping her from. One night, while he bathed in the back, she lifted the Bible again. The note was gone. In its place was a crisp business card tucked between Psalms and Proverbs. It read only, "C.H. Holdings, you know where to find us." She placed it back. Her hands trembled. She had heard of that name. Once, a preacher's son from the city had boasted about it. How C.H. Holdings built estates in Lekki and funded campaigns for governors. What was their card doing inside her husband's Bible? That night, she made him his favorite, yam pottage with smoked fish, and asked, "Do you believe God punishes those who lie to protect someone they love?" He looked at her, surprised. "I think God understands broken people better than we do," he said. She nodded, but her heart raced. Later that week, a stranger came to the village, not in a black SUV, but on a motorcycle. He was older, well-dressed, and wore a wristwatch that could pay for 10 thatched huts. He didn't ask for directions. He walked straight to Obinna's farm. Adaeze watched from the road, half hidden behind cassava leaves. The man handed Obinna a small envelope. Obinna didn't open it. He just nodded. They shook hands like old friends. No words, only understanding. The man left. Adaeze waited till nightfall, then asked, "Was that a customer?" Obinna raised a brow. "Something like that." "And what do you sell, Obinna?" she pressed. "Time," he said. "And secrets." She didn't laugh. He didn't explain. That night he didn't pray. He sat beside her in silence, staring into the fire until the flames died down. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft. "If I asked the truth, would you give it?" He didn't look at her. "No," he said. "Not yet." "Why?" "Because truth changes things, and I'm not ready to lose what we have." "What do we have?" she whispered. "A fragile peace," he replied. She turned her face away, blinking back tears she didn't want him to see. He reached out and gently touched her hand. "But I promise you this," he said. "When the time is right, I'll let the truth speak louder than the lie." It rained that night, heavily. The kind of rain that swallowed every sound and turned the earth into red mud. Adaeze couldn't sleep. She lay in bed listening to the wind rattle their roof, and the water dripped steadily into the clay pot they used for leaks. Obinna was beside her, still and breathing evenly, but Adaeze wasn't fooled. His stillness had always been his disguise. She waited until his breath deepened, then slipped from the bed. She wrapped a scarf around her head, took the lantern, and tiptoed outside. She didn't know what she was looking for. only that she had to find it. Something confirmed the suspicion that had taken root in her soul and refused to loosen. She walked toward the back of the hut, past the plantain stems, and into the overgrowth near the fence of thorns. The stone was still there, just where it had always been. She knelt and pushed it aside. The chest stared up at her like a sleeping beast. For a moment, her hands froze. Then slowly, she lifted the lid. Inside was not what she expected. No guns. No passports. No cash. Instead, stacks of documents, all sealed in foreign envelopes. Bank letters. Real estate deeds. Property titles. A leather-bound notebook with embossed initials. CHO. She opened it. Inside were pages of figures, transactions, company names she didn't recognize but knew were important. There was also a photograph. Obinna in a suit, beside a man she'd seen once on television during an election. Her throat tightened. Her knees wobbled. She replaced everything exactly as she found it, lowered the lid, and sat back on her heels. A twig snapped behind her. She turned. Obinna stood in the rain, shirtless, drenched, eyes locked on hers. For a long time, neither of them spoke. Then he walked forward, slowly, and stood above her. "Now you know," he said, voice low and tired. "I didn't mean to find it," she said. "But you did," he replied. "I wasn't going to tell you yet." "Why?" she asked. "Because the moment you knew, you'd stop seeing me the way I needed you to," he said. "And how's that?" she asked, rising to her feet. "Like I was human," he said. She stared at him. "You lied to me." "I didn't lie. I just didn't speak." He ran a hand through his wet hair and looked away. "I was supposed to disappear here. Live small. Be nothing. That was the plan." "But why?" she asked. "Why would someone like you live like this?" He was silent for so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then finally, "Because power ruins men, and I was becoming someone I hated." She swallowed hard. "So this marriage, was it part of your hiding too?" "No," he said quickly. That was real." They stood in the rain like that, two strangers bound by a truth that refused to stay buried. She wanted to scream, to ask 100 questions. But instead she whispered, "What now?" He looked at her, rain sliding down his face. "Now you decide," he said. "Do you stay with a man you thought was poor, or walk away from a man you now know is rich?" She didn't answer. Not yet, because for the first time, she wasn't sure which version of him she had really fallen for. The man who brought her water from the stream, or the ghost of wealth hiding beneath the mud. For days, Adaeze moved through the village like someone walking in a dream. She still woke before the sun, fetched water, tended to the garden, and swept the hut floor. But something had changed inside her. Every smile felt hollow, every task mechanical. She looked at Obinna and saw not just a man who repaired their roof with his bare hands, but a man whose photograph was once on a political poster. She couldn't unsee the evidence, couldn't unknow what she now knew. And yet, he still greeted her the same way each morning, still helped her shell beans in the evening, still walked beside her in silence like nothing had shifted. But everything had. The village buzzed louder now. More visitors came. A sleek motorcycle one day. A woman in dark sunglasses another. People whispered louder. Some even said they saw Obinna counting foreign currency at the back of the palm wine bar. Adaeze didn't respond to the gossip. She had her own noise to sort through. Her mother came again, this time with wide eyes. "Adaeze, you know who your husband is?" she asked, almost breathless. "I know enough," Adaeze replied. "Is it true he owns land in Lagos?" her mother pressed. "I don't know," Adaeze said, though she had seen the papers. "Then you better find out," her mother muttered, "because this village doesn't forget those who marry riches without sharing it." That night, Obinna returned home later than usual. He looked tired but relieved. "You went somewhere," she said. "Yes. Lagos." He paused and nodded. "You always planned to leave, didn't you?" she asked. "Not until recently," he admitted. "What changed?" "You," he said. The words disarmed her. She stared at him, waiting. He finally exhaled and sat down. "I thought I could stay hidden here, that the world I left behind would forget me. But they didn't. And neither did I. I thought marrying you would help me remember what mattered. And did it? She asked. Yes, he said, voice raw. But it also reminded me of what I owe. Oh, who? She asked. My father, my brother, myself, people who died thinking I was still a fool chasing money. He stood and walked toward the door. There's a company in my name. Accounts. Employees. I tried to vanish, Adaeze, but they've been waiting. And they're done waiting. So you're leaving? She whispered. I want you to come with me, he said, turning around. To Lagos. To the house I never lived in. To the life I once ran from. She stepped back. You asked me to leave everything I know behind again. I'm not asking you to leave your life. I'm asking you to let me give you one. Silence hung between them. The oil lamp flickered. Somewhere outside, a goat bleated in the dark. Adaeze's chest ached. This was the choice she had once begged for, to be free from poverty. But now, she realized the cost of it might be everything else. You can think about it, Obinna said softly, but the car comes in 2 days. She didn't speak as he stepped outside and disappeared into the night. She sat alone, staring at the packed red earth beneath her feet, wondering if stepping into wealth meant burying everything she was. By morning, the rumors had become headlines. Obinna's name was now spoken with awe and envy. Someone had taken a photo of him, standing next to the motorcycle visitor. It was shared at the Palm Wine Bar, shown at the market, passed from hand to hand like currency. The girls at the stream said he had a house in Banana Island. The tailor claimed Obinna's shoes alone cost more than his entire sewing machine. The elders began to murmur that Adaeze should come and settle the community. One even joked, when a man digs gold in secret, the village deserves to share in the shine. It wasn't a request. It was a warning wrapped in humor. Adaeze walked home that day with a heavy bowl of cassava on her head and even heavier thoughts in her heart. Children ran beside her, singing songs they had twisted from gossip. Adaeze the lucky, Adaeze the queen. She didn't smile. She just walked faster. That evening, a group of women came to visit, not to greet, but to assess. You've done well for yourself, one said, eyes scanning the hut like it held secrets on the floor. Some girls marry farmers and stay farmers. But you, God really touched your story. Adaeze thanked them politely, offered water, and waited for them to leave. They didn't. One leaned closer. We hear your husband is leaving soon. Going to the city? We're still discussing it. Adaeze said. If he leaves, you must not forget us, the woman said. You know this village is small, but our mouths are not. That night, she said nothing to Obinna. He was in the back, cleaning his old machete like it still mattered. She watched him, trying to reconcile the man in faded clothes with the image of him in a tailored suit beside a governor. He caught her staring. Say it, he said. Say what? Whatever's choking your chest. The village knows, she said. They'll always know, he replied. They want us to share, and they wanted to follow you. And do you want to? I don't know, she whispered, because I don't know who I'm following. He stood, walked over, and sat beside her. I was a boy with too much money and too little peace. I lost my father, my brother, and my name to business. I came here to bury what remained. And me, she asked, was I part of your escape? No, he said. You were the part that reminded me I was still worth saving. She looked away. Then why does it feel like I'm the one losing something? Because you are, he said. You're losing the lie. And the truth always costs more. The next day, a letter came. Hand-delivered. Sealed. No address. Only Obinna's name written in gold ink. He didn't open it in front of her. But later that night, she saw it in flames outside, burning in the fire pit. He didn't explain. She didn't ask. But whatever it said, it clearly made his decision for him. The car came the next morning. The black car parked just outside the village boundary, as if afraid to enter fully. It was sleek, dustless, foreign. Its windows were tinted, its engine silent. Yet the whole village heard its presence. Children ran to see it. Men paused their farming. Women stood at their doorways, watching like it was a movie come to life. Adaeze stood at the window, staring at the vehicle. Her heart beat fast, but not from excitement, from fear. This wasn't just a car. It was a line between two worlds. Obinna wore the white kaftan again, freshly pressed. His low-cut hair was trimmed. His sandals were gone, replaced with dark brown leather shoes that looked like they belonged in a boardroom, not Umuofia's cracked paths. He moved like he was walking back into himself, like the mask he had taken off was now being worn again. "It's time," he said. Adaeze didn't move. "You can stay," he added, voice quiet. "But if you come with me, nothing will be the same." She looked around the hut. The clay floor she had swept 1,000 times. The raffia mat she had woven with her own hands. The small window where morning light always crept in. Every inch of it carried her fingerprints. Every inch of it carried her sacrifice. She didn't speak, just walked outside, slowly. The villagers parted for her. Some looked proud, others bitter, all curious. She met Obinna at the center of the compound. "You said you needed to give back," she said. "Yes," he replied. "Then promise me something," she said. "Don't become what you ran from." His jaw tightened. "I'll try," he said. "Try isn't a promise," she replied. He looked her in the eyes. "I promise." They walked together toward the car. The driver opened the back door. Obinna stepped in first. Adaeze paused. The village stretched behind her. The city waited ahead. And she stood in the space between, holding every version of herself at once. She climbed in. The car pulled away in silence, rolling over the red dust like it never belonged there. As they passed the last cluster of huts, she turned to Obinna. "When we get there," she said, "I want the truth. All of it." He nodded. "It's time," he said again. She rested her head against the glass and watched Umuofia shrink in the distance. A single tear slipped down her cheek. Not from regret, but from knowing she was now part of a story much bigger than she had ever imagined. The drive to Lagos took 5 hours, but to Adaeze, it felt like 5 lifetimes. She watched as the forest thinned, replaced by endless roads, honking cars, and rising glass towers that pierced the sky. She had never seen a place so loud, so fast, so full of movement. Obinna didn't say much. He made calls in low tones, gave quiet directions, nodded when she asked simple questions. But he never looked away from her too long, like he was watching to see if she'd run. When the car turned into a private estate with gates taller than any trees she'd ever seen, Adaeze's breath caught. Security guards saluted. A second car followed them in. The compound was white-walled, flower-trimmed, and clean enough to reflect the sky. The house? Bigger than her entire street back home. When the door opened, cool air wrapped around her like silk. The floors were marble. The walls were full of art she didn't understand. A woman in uniform bowed and offered her a drink. "Welcome, madam," she said. Adaeze didn't take it. She just looked at Obinna. "Whose house is this?" she asked. "Ours," he said simply. The first night, she didn't sleep. The bed was too soft. The ceiling too high. The silence in the house didn't feel like the quiet in Umuofia. It felt hollow. She walked barefoot to the balcony and watched the city lights flicker like restless fireflies. She heard Obinna's voice in the next room. On the phone. "Yes, schedule it." "No, she doesn't know yet. I'll tell her when the time is right." She stepped back into the shadows before he noticed her. The next morning, a man arrived in a black suit with a briefcase. Obinna invited him into the study. The doors were thick, but the voices still leaked through. "Board position reopening accounts. The press will want something soon." When the door opened, the man walked out smiling. "She'll adjust," he said to Obinna as he left. Adaeze stood nearby, pretending to dust a table. Obinna noticed. "I was going to tell you," he said. "Then tell me now," she replied. He hesitated. "They want me to return to the company. I used to sit on the board. I left years ago, but now they want me back." "And what do you want?" she asked. He looked at her. "I want to earn what I gave up." That night, she sat across from him at the dinner table, untouched food between them. "Do you want me to become someone else?" she asked. "You mean someone who belongs here?" he said. "No, I want you to stay who you are. That's what saved me." She looked down at her plain wrapper. Then why do I feel like I'm disappearing? He reached across the table, took her hand gently. Because you're standing at the beginning of something, and beginnings always feel like endings. The next morning, Adaeze stood in front of the tall mirror in the guest room. It didn't reflect the girl from Umuofia. The wrapper she wore was ironed. Her feet were clean. Her hair was tied back neatly. But her eyes, they carried a weight even the glass couldn't soften. Obinna had gone to a meeting. She wasn't invited. He said it was just business. And so she stood there, alone in a mansion full of people who smiled too much and said too little. She walked out to the garden and stood barefoot on the grass. It was perfectly trimmed, too perfect. Like everything here was carefully measured, designed, and staged. She missed the crooked path outside the hut. She missed the rooster that crowed offbeat. She missed waking up and knowing who she was. A young maid approached her shyly. "Madam, they say you're the new wife," she said in pidgin. Adaeze smiled faintly. "They say many things." The girl tilted her head. "Do you like it here?" Adaeze paused. "It's quiet." The girl nodded. "Too quiet for people who carry noise inside." Adaeze looked at her and, for the first time in days, laughed. Later that day, a delivery came. Boxes of fabric, gold-threaded head ties, designer shoes. Adaeze touched none of it. Instead, she took out the faded wrapper she had brought from the village and wore it. When Obinna returned, he saw her in it and paused. "You kept that?" he asked. "I kept everything that made me feel real," she replied. He walked over, handed her a small box. "I was saving this," he said. Inside was a phone. "New, sleek. It's time people know who you are," he said. "Not just my wife, but the woman beside me." She looked at him. "And who is that?" "The one who makes me worthy of a legacy," he answered. She held the phone, unsure. "Do I have to become someone I'm not?" "No," he said, "but you will become someone more." That night, she sat in the same garden, wrapper tied around her knees, head resting against a swing chair. She watched the stars. They looked different here. Fainter, distant, but still there. A message came in on the phone. Just a name, Mr. Adaeze. She stared at it, not knowing who that was. Then another followed. "We need to talk about the press conference. They want to know about your wife." Adaeze stood up, heart heavy. She didn't reply. Inside, she found Obinna waiting. "I can cancel it," he said quickly. "I just want you beside me." She nodded slowly. "Then I need to find my place beside you. Not behind, not in front. Beside." He took her hand. "Then that's exactly where you'll be." But as she walked toward the staircase, she felt it. The shadow of everything to come. Fame, expectations, choices. The village girl was still inside her. But now, so was the billionaire's wife. And the woman she was becoming? She hadn't met her yet,